Some people may find the photos in this story disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. At 8:30 p.m., December 29th, 1972, the doomed Eastern Airlines Flight 401 would depart from JFK Airport, Queens, New York, on its flight to Miami, Florida. Aboard were 176 passengers and 13 crew, including Captain Bob Loft and the airplane's technician, Don Repo. The plane they were flying was a brand new Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, a massive two-story airplane that was capable of holding up to 400 people. The top floor was passenger seating. The bottom floor was a kitchen and employee lounge. A plane that large has 3 landing gears, one under each wing and one under the nose of the plane. Inside the cockpit, you'll find indicator lights that tell you when the landing gear has been engaged. On approach to Miami Airport, the nose landing gear indicator light was not on. They made various attempts to fix the issue, assuming that the issue was the light and not the landing gear itself. The air traffic controller at Miami Airport would instruct them to circle back around the Everglades, staying out of air traffic until they got the situation fixed. In the cockpit, the pilot had put the plane on autopilot, pushing the light bulb in and out, taking it out, putting it back in. Nothing worked. Lastly, they jammed the light bulb in sideways and couldn't remove it. At that point, they had one choice to make sure that the landing gear was actually down. There's a small hatch with a set of stairs called a hellhole. Don Repo, the plane's technician, would have to climb down that ladder and get a visual on the landing gear. At that point, Bob Loft became frustrated with this light bulb situation, turned around and told Don Repo to do just that, and he would. Meanwhile, outside the plane, something was going on that no one recognized. At some point, messing with the light bulb, the captain's leg had bumped something inside the cockpit, turning off the autopilot. While everyone's attention was on the light bulb, the airplane was in a slow descent towards the earth. Sometime after midnight, Flight 401 would strike the earth. Robert Marquise and his friend were out hunting frogs in the Everglades on an airboat when they saw a huge flash of light. They drove their boat towards the flash of light as fast as they could. In the black of night, armed only with a headlamp, when they arrived at the scene, they couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Strewn about would be body parts, people cut in half, other people screaming for help, and in one particular incident, they found a man still strapped to his seat, in danger of drowning in the murky water. The boys did their best to help anyone they could. In 30 minutes, the Coast Guard search and rescue would be on scene. 79 people survived. The rest perished. But that's only the beginning of the story of Flight 401. You see, these planes were terribly expensive, and that particular airplane had crashed because of a light bulb. So any parts that could have been salvaged from the wreck were salvaged, tested, and reused. These parts would go into various other airplanes of the same model, all owned by Eastern Airlines. Shortly after, Eastern Airlines started having experiences that couldn't be explained, such as various reports from the crew about the feeling of constantly being watched while on the aircraft. In one flight, an Eastern Airline employee was seen sitting in a seat. When the stewardess tried to ask him if he was catching a flight from one airport to another, which is known as deadheading, he didn't respond. The captain was called. When he kneeled down to look at the man's face, he fell backwards, exclaiming, "My God, it's Bob Loft." Bob Loft had perished in Flight 401. At that point, the Eastern Airline employee that was sitting in the seat vanished into thin air in front of a couple hundred passengers and crew. On another plane, while seated in the cockpit, the captain was approached by a man in an Eastern Airlines uniform. The man informed the captain that an engine had a malfunction and that he needed to look into it before he took off. At that point, the man promptly disappeared. The captain was obviously shaken by the incident, but had the engine assessed anyway. You guessed it, the engine did have a malfunction, and it was fixed before takeoff. On another flight, a woman started screaming for no reason. When they approached her and asked her what was wrong, she said that a pilot had appeared sitting beside her. He didn't walk to the seat, he just appeared. And then as quickly as he appeared, disappeared. Not being able to understand what she just saw, she experienced a psychotic break. When they landed, they actually had to remove her in restraints. These are just 3 out of the dozens of reports of similar activity that happened on the Eastern Airline flights between 1972 and 1974. The pilots and crew would make reports to Eastern Airlines, written reports of these incidents. Those reports would go into a folder, which would mysteriously disappear. Eastern Airlines would go on to deny that those reports were ever even made, and employees would be told to forget about it and don't mention this to anyone for fear of termination. Despite denying those reports and insisting that none of them were true, in 1974, Eastern Airlines removed all parts that were associated with Flight 401. Those parts were removed and destroyed at a great personal cost. So why would Eastern Airlines lose thousands of dollars removing parts from Flight 401 if the incidents were not true? But shortly after the parts were removed, the stories dried up. There were no more incidents. So what do you think? Does the supernatural and paranormal exist? If so, why? Are they here to help? Tell us what you think. J Mac, out.